with a brand new speech hot off the press.
You saw that, did you?
Yes.
It is hot off the press, actually. It was, when I was thinking about, coming and presenting here, it got my mind thinking, and I was going to take a little bit different approach. But as you said, my name is Chaplain Aisha Kreutz. I'm the president of Frederick Douglass Foundation for New York. We're the largest Christ-centered, multi-ethnic Republican ministry in America today. And I always like to start off with three things before I get started. And the first is always just to thank God. Thank Him for the ability that we live in such a free country, that we can gather this way, and that we have the ability to speak and think freely. So I just want to give all honor and praise to Jesus Christ first and foremost. I also want to thank my husband. He's right over there. He came in with me. And he's the one that really makes it possible for me to be able to travel around and do the things that I do, helping the glue that keeps our family together. And so give him a round of applause. And lastly, I'd like to...
Is his name Matt?
Matt. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Matt.
Oh, hey. How are you? Good.
And lastly,
Haven't seen you in a while.
Just to get my notes started, your last name is Aisha?
Kreutz. No, my last name is Kreutz. K-R-E-U-T-Z. Like, Oi, Electric Avenue. And some people say Kreutz, like as in rights.
And you said this is a Christ-centered and political, all in the same.
All in the same one. We're very proud of our three pillars. We're devoted Christians, proud Americans, active Republicans. We don't shy away from it. We say it right out there. We're not for everyone, and we know that, and that's okay. There's plenty of organizations and groups that you can be part of. We do a great job of unifying a bunch of different groups, and we have a lot of leaders of groups that are part of the Frederick Douglass Foundation, from Alveda King and Star Parker and Deneen Barilli, all these people that do their own things. A lot of 912ers that are part of our group, because we want you to keep your autonomy, be able to do what God, the lane that God has put you in, but at the same time there has to be some way to unite us all. So that's kind of what we do. And then lastly, do we have any veterans here? If you do, you can just raise your hand. Veterans. And we can give them a round of applause as well. The same, I think it's very important, you're the reason that you and your families have sacrificed so that we can be here. And I always like to stop and give honor where honor is due. So I thank you very much from the bottom of my heart and my family that you were willing to do that. As I said, when I was asked to come present about the Frederick Douglass Foundation, I started thinking about all of the solutions to the problems in America that we come up with, but that go nowhere, because too often our society fails to execute good solutions simply because it doesn't actually understand the problems. Then the other day, on the last page of the National Review on Dead Tree, Mark Stein had a column. It's called Sharia's Protector, and Mark Stein reprised a story he once recounted numerous times in the last decade on Sir Charles Napier of Great Britain. During colonial times, General Napier was working with the British-occupied India, and he was being told about Suti, which is a Hindu custom where upon death of a man, his widow is then burned upon the funeral pyre. In response to the question of whether this will happen while he was in charge, General Napier said he didn't get all like multiculturally squishy or anything when he was asked, or asked if he was going to witness this tradition. Instead, in Mark Stein's word, General Napier he said, "You say that it's your custom to burn widows. Very well. We also have a custom. When men burn a woman alive, we tie a rope around their neck and we hang them. You build your funeral pyre. Beside it, my carpenters will build a gallows. You may follow your custom and we will follow ours." These days, That's what we're missing. Cultural confidence. Without the confidence in our culture, we lose it. And that is what's happening on a daily basis. We're losing our great American culture because those who destroy America are now teaching our children. And now we're going to further federalize this indoctrination system by implementing Common Core, which, among other things, further teaches that America was founded upon evil people and is indeed evil in itself. But on the other hand, we've heard all of our lives what a great country America is. And you have to ask yourself, well, which one is it? If America is the greatest, then it would also suggest that our culture is the greatest as well. In the words of Sarah Palin, you betcha. And that's where the Frederick Douglass Foundation comes in. We aren't infected with multicultural tendencies to pretend that our culture, that other cultures are better than our culture, and thus allow our own culture to be watered down and soaked in shame over some of the bad things that have happened in history. Bad things happen. Our goal is to edify, educate, agitate, and empower people. But let's consider the left's method of bringing down America. The left runs the Democrat Party today and has no doubt infiltrated the Republican Party, just as the liberals have infected the church. And it's no secret to any of us that the liberal progressives are trying to destroy America in any way possible. They're coming at us from 360 different directions, 24 hours a day, and it's up to us to stand up for the truth of God's Word, as well as taking back our party. The Republican Party has been shamed into cowering and biding its time rather than exhibiting the cultural confidence that General Napier had spoken about. It's up to us, we the conservatives, Tea Parties, libertarians, and alike, who are on this, who are on board with freedom, to conserve that which is great about the founding of America. It's constitutional conservatism which unites us. We need to go over the heads of the liberal institutions. The Obama administration is filled with something Frederick Douglass Foundation Mac Wrights likes to call bureaucratic sclerosis, or BS for short. It's the bureaucratic tentacles of government. If the bureaucratic tentacles of government actually worked, there'd be no excuse to make them larger. But because of government's desire to grow, bureaucratic tentacles are almost always created with the knowledge that inevitable failure will be regarded with largesse. We need to realize this and go over their heads. We need to educate our children outside of this insidious government system whose system has been feeding our kids lies upon lies. As the left tries to convince children that the Founding Fathers were evil because our nation was founded on slavery, the Frederick Douglass Foundation teaches how this is incorrect. Slavery actually existed before the nation did, and it happened to exist here on the land where our nation was founded. Just as Frederick Douglass was born a slave, Thomas Jefferson was born a slaveholder. At the time, the black man was considered property, and his freedom, if he had it, was fraught with peril. With that in mind, we must give our Founding Fathers some latitude. Upon the issuance of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson, our Founding Father, had decided to risk, our Founding Fathers had decided to risk their fortunes, their honors, and their lives to throw off the colonial yoke of Great Britain. Ending slavery simultaneously would have been a logistical nightmare that would have all but ensured the failure in the Revolutionary War to come. However, many of our Founding Fathers were indeed anti-slavery. They just weren't in charge of their nation. Nonetheless, even slaveholder Thomas Jefferson included in the Declaration a set of principles that would be used later on to end slavery. It would actually necessitate the abolition of slavery. It said all men are created equal with the God-given inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president, would later incorporate these principles in the Gettysburg Address. 20 years ago, our Founding Fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedication and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. So while the nation's founding didn't perfectly coincide with the New World's shedding of the sin of slavery, it was indeed founded as a nation that would absolutely need to abolish slavery if it were to ever live up to the principles upon which it was founded. That nation wasn't founded so white man could enslave the black man. That was already happening. The nation was actually founded in a way that would necessitate the end of slavery. But how often do you hear the story told like that? Not very often, I'm sure. And that's the problem. We've lost our cultural confidence so much that we're either too afraid to stand up for our nation's founding, or we're unable to do so for a lack of real historical context. And this is thanks to the left's takeover of institutions. This is where we come in, with programs like David Barton's American History in Black and White, seminars to teach you how to systematically engage people who have never heard or even considered these truths before. It's a chicken and the egg story. America didn't create slavery with its founding, but it did indeed adopt the principles in its founding that would later be used to eliminate slavery. How can the founding of this country be considered evil if that's the founding? Keep that in mind when confronted with the left's arguments for redefining marriage. The meaning of marriage came from God. It existed like slavery before the founding of America. Does using government to destroy the biblical sacrament of marriage by changing its meaning and thus rendering it meaningless serve society in the same way that eliminating slavery did? Only a leftist, liberal, progressive mindset would consider marriage akin to slavery. And now I want to refer back to the fact that our nation's founding, the black man was considered property. He wasn't fully human. And I understand that the 3/5 clause was put in place to keep the pro-slavery vote down, because slaveholders were only able to get 3/5 of a vote for every slave they owned instead of a full vote, thus keeping the representation for slaveholding states down. I understand this was eventually used to help the anti-slavery movement defeat the pro-slavery movement democratically. But when you're the person only considered 3/5 of a person, it really doesn't matter the reason. Just ask anyone who has been denied personhood in the past. A Jew, a slave, the disabled, Indians, and the preborn child today. When a man isn't considered a person, but rather property, it's very easy for other men to whip, beat, rape, lynch, slaughter, and exploit that man. And with that in mind, I want to give you a brief overview of one of the things that we at the Frederick Douglass Foundation are working on. Amongst the other things, it's called the Black Personhood Initiative. We're working with other pro-life organizations to engage inner-city pastors throughout the state to help introduce legislation in New York that would establish personhood at conception. At conception, the DNA blueprint is developed and establishes a unique person. Considering the preborn baby makes it harder to commit abortion on that baby. This is not about legislatively outlawing abortion. It's about changing the culture. Once you have enough support and votes in order to get an amendment passed legislatively, you don't really need it anymore. We've raised about $12,000 so far. We're targeted $25,000 for this media campaign. We will publicly unveil the project in mid-January. We have a press conference coming. We have about 30 inner-city pastors that have signed on to it. If anyone's interested in hearing more about it or investing in the project, please let me know. As well, to continue on, while we desire to define all preborn babies as persons, we call it the Black Personhood Initiative to help draw attention to the aspects of abortion. Of course, abortion is white, black, everything, and they're all important. But we must be strategic and tactical as well. So Democrat politicians won't be able to sign on to this initiative because of their pro-abortion stance. But aren't you looking forward to their explanations as to why they cannot sign on to a piece of legislation that defines a black baby as a person? Those are arguments that we're going to want to hear in the inner city. they're going to sound similar to the arguments of why if you don't like slavery, don't have a slave. If you don't want an abortion, don't have an abortion. And it's going to be very interesting to start hearing those arguments come out. This is the kind of civil rights movement that can help start a good conversation, which can lead into the real teaching of the Democrat Party in America. After the black man was freed from slavery, there were still efforts to deny him personhood. The Democrat Party started the KKK to keep free blacks in line. We know that, but often we don't say it enough or remind our liberal friends that they vote for the party of slavery, segregation, and KKK. And now a black genocide through abortion. The liberals never apologize for that, but they love to call us racist. We need the cultural confidence to stand up to anyone calling us a racist. Liberal arguments are weak and fully ignorant of reality. Share this with your liberal friends when they try to win a debate on the cheap by calling you a racist. Charles Darwin came up with the theory that we evolved from apes in order to argue that the black man was inferior to the white man because he more resembled the ape from which we supposedly evolved. I don't care if liberals think they evolved from monkeys. It helps explain why they act like animals. But as for me, I was made in the image of God. The liberals want to teach children that as one generation away from apes, they are more superior to their parents. But my children understand that I am one generation closer to the first humans created by God. I am one generation closer to perfection. Let me just get back to my point. Charles Darwin's cousin, Sir Francis Galton, is considered the father of eugenics. Galton made his money by trading slaves and used his cousin's evolution theories to argue for the elimination of the black man from society. The American eugenics movement spawned Planned Parenthood and the Nazi death camps. Planned Parenthood was founded to help remove what Margaret Sanger considered weeds from society, which was the word that she referred to as blacks. If they couldn't kill them on the streets, they'd convince them to kill themselves in the abortion mill death chambers. Knowing that Planned Parenthoods are strategically located in inner cities where they will more successfully pick off minorities according to the original racist plan, ask your liberal friends why they never complain that it's racist when a white suburban girl are too often forced to drive into the ghetto to kill their baby. If the Democrats really believed in equal distribution of services, why aren't they complaining about the lack of abortion mills in white-dominated suburbs? We know the answer, but let the liberal try to figure that one out, or for that matter, argue their way out of that one. Keep this in mind too. The company that makes Zyklon B, the gas the Nazis used to kill the Jews, also makes RU-486, the chemical abortion pill. Today in America, 1,200 black babies are killed every day in abortion mills. According to the Tuskegee Institute, in 86 years, the Democrats Party, KKK, killed about 3,600 blacks. Today, in the Democrat Party's abortion mills, they kill about that amount of babies in 3 days. Which means the KKK killed, or Planned Parenthood killed more babies in 3 days than the KKK did in 86 years. But when you consider a fetus just a ball of flesh, rather than a real person, that genocide becomes easier. Remember that slavery was more easily justified because the black man wasn't a person. And the Holocaust was justified because Jews and others liquidated weren't considered persons. In the 40 years since Roe, while blacks represent only 13% of the population, they represent 30% of all abortions committed in America. It's much easier to understand why I'm a black conservative woman when the connection is made between the racist motivations behind slavery, segregation, the Democrat Party, and abortion. Like Frederick Douglass, I will not yield to the left's determined efforts to culturally wussify America into a third world nation of non-persons devoid of cultural competence because they allowed their culture to be destroyed one aspect after another. I refuse to be forced into victimhood. and have my motivation stolen by those who love nothing more than to skim off the wealth distributed to me through what they call entitlements. While this method of cultural oppression might not be the same as slavery, it's still oppression. And with that, I want to talk to you a bit about chapter 10 of Frederick Douglass's first autobiography, Narrative of the Life. Frederick Douglass had defied his master over and over in pursuit of learning to read and write. And his master finally sent him off to Mr. Covey for a year. Mr. Covey was known for being so abusive that he was able to break slaves for their slaveholders. 6 months into his stay, Douglass described his mental state thusly: Mr. Covey succeeded in breaking me. I was broken in body, soul, and spirit. My natural elasticity was crushed. My intellect languished. The disposition to read departed. The cheerful spark that lingered about my eye died. The dark night of slavery closed in upon me, and behold, a man transformed into a brute. Days later, Frederick Douglass made a last-ditch effort to being freed from this crazy oppression, and Mr. Covey came in to beat Frederick Douglass as punishment. Douglass wrote this: "As soon as I found what he was up to, I gave a sudden spring, and as I did so, he holding onto my legs, I was brought sprawling onto the stable floor. Mr. Covey seemed now to think he had me and could do what he pleased. But at this moment, from whence came the spirit, I don't know. I resolved to fight, and suiting my action to the resolution, I seized Mr. Covey hard by the throat, and as I did so, I rose." Frederick and Covey fought for 2 hours, but Frederick Douglass had in the end won. He wrote, "The whole 6 months after that I spent with Mr. Covey, he never laid the weight of his finger upon me in anger. He would occasionally say to me, he didn't want to get a hold of me again. No, I thought, you do not. You need not, for you will come out worse off than you did before." And that's the kind of cultural confidence that we need to take inspiration from. The left is attacking us from every direction, destroying all of our institutions and the family unit. And too many Republicans refuse to stand up to this onslaught. It is up to us. We are the last holdouts. If we fail to preserve the elements of our Constitution that guarantee us our rights and instead allow the left to interpret these rights as rights of the government to control us, there will be no more freedom. Freedom, we need to preserve it. It's our responsibility. We are already being turned into debt slaves as our government continues to borrow 40 cents of every dollar it spends. We must not accept the dominance of the Karl Rovian Republican squishy assembly line. History is on our side, and it's our job to conserve it. That's what's great about America. Trickle-down government doesn't preserve freedom. It destroys it. Thank you. And that's pretty much, again, we have some other stuff. Did you bring that in?
I don't know what you mean.